We were just roommates, until he climbed into my bed one rainy night. It started the way a lot of things in my life seem to start. Accidentally. When I first met Evan, I wasn't looking for a roommate, let alone someone who would end up changing how I understood myself. I was just broke, newly out of school, and desperate to split the rent with anyone who wasn't a total stranger from Craigslist. Evan wasn't exactly a friend. Not yet. But he was someone I knew from a few overlapping circles. We had mutual acquaintances, had bumped into each other at bars or parties, the kind of guy you wave to across a crowded room but never actually sit down with. So when he mentioned, offhand, that he was looking for a place, I jumped on it. Within a week, he was dragging his mismatched furniture into the apartment, joking about how it looked like a thrift store exploded in his room. He was easy to live with in a way I hadn't expected. He didn't leave dirty dishes everywhere, didn't steal my food, didn't blast music late at night. We had our separate routines. He had his job at some marketing firm. I was trying to hold down shifts at a coffee shop while figuring out what I actually wanted to do with my life. At first, we were just roommates in the strictest sense. Passing ships. Hey man, you good? Yeah, you. Cool. We'd share a pizza now and then watch a game, nothing more. But living with someone, you start to notice things. The way he hummed in the shower. The fact that he always kicked one sock off in his sleep and left it on the couch if he fell asleep watching TV. The way he had this laugh, sharp and sudden, that always caught me off guard. And then there were the small, quiet moments. Coming home late and finding him sitting on the floor of the living room with his laptop, music playing low, a beer half-finished beside him. Or mornings when we'd both be rushing out the door, bumping into each other in the narrow hallway, apologizing as we grabbed our bags. None of it was remarkable on its own. But strung together, it started to feel like something I didn't want to let go of. I told myself it was just friendship. And maybe it was. But even then, I think a part of me knew I was noticing him differently than I should. The night everything changed, it was raining. Not a soft drizzle, but one of those heavy, relentless downpours that makes the whole world feel wrapped in gray. I'd been in my room, lying in bed, scrolling aimlessly through my phone, listening to the rain hammer against the windows. Somewhere past midnight, there was a soft knock at my door. Hey. Evan's voice low, almost hesitant. You awake? I sat up. Yeah. What's up? He pushed the door open and stepped inside, his hair damp, wearing just a t-shirt and sweatpants. He looked restless, like he couldn't sit still. Couldn't sleep, he said, shrugging. The rain's too loud. Mind if I? He gestured toward my bed. I should have said no, or at least hesitated. But instead I just shifted over, pulling the blanket back without a second thought. And just like that, he climbed in. The bed was suddenly smaller, warmer, filled with his presence. I could smell his shampoo, feel the heat radiating off his skin even though we weren't touching. We lay there in silence for a while, both of us staring up at the ceiling as the rain kept pounding outside. My heart wouldn't calm down. Every breath felt too loud. I kept telling myself this was nothing, that it didn't mean anything. But then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, he shifted closer. His arm brushed against mine. Neither of us moved away. I don't know how long we stayed like that, not speaking, just sharing space. I could feel the weight of everything unsaid pressing between us. And then he whispered, so quietly I almost thought I imagined it. Do you ever think about it? About us? The words sent a jolt through me. My throat went dry. I didn't know what to say, but the silence was answer enough. He turned his head toward me, and even in the dim light I could see the conflict in his eyes. Fear, curiosity, something softer beneath it all. I shouldn't be here, he murmured, but he didn't move. And in that moment, I realized something. I didn't want him to go. I wanted him there, in my bed on that rainy night, more than I'd wanted anything in a long time. But wanting it and admitting it, those were two different things. So instead of answering, I just shifted a little closer, letting my shoulder rest against his. It was the smallest gesture, but it was enough. His breath caught, and then he let it out, long and shaky. We didn't kiss that night. We didn't cross that line. But something had shifted undeniably. When I woke up in the morning, he was still there, his arm slung loosely over my waist, his face turned toward me like it was the most natural thing in the world. And I knew, deep down, that nothing would ever be the same again. The strange thing about moments like that is how they make time feel unstable. A night can stretch on forever when you're lying awake, your heart racing, wondering if you've just imagined everything. But the morning after feels too fast, like sand slipping through your fingers. Evan woke before me, untangling himself quietly, almost as if he didn't want me to notice. By the time I sat up, he was standing in the doorway, rubbing the back of his neck. Sorry, he said, not looking at me. Didn't mean to crash in here all night. Guess I fell asleep. I forced a casual smile, even though my chest was pounding. It's fine, really. He nodded, still avoiding my eyes, and slipped out into the hallway. And just like that, the moment was gone. But it lingered, heavy and unresolved, in every glance, every laugh, every small interaction that followed. Because once you've shared a bed with someone, even if nothing happens, you can't go back to pretending they're just your roommate. You can't unfeel what you felt in the dark, with the rain beating against the windows, when their breath was close enough to touch. And deep down, I knew he felt it too. The next few days felt like living inside a question that had no answer. Evan and I went about our lives as if nothing had happened, but it was impossible to ignore the shift. The silence carried weight now. The space between us, on the couch, at the kitchen counter, brushing past each other in the hallway, felt electric, charged with everything we weren't saying. It's funny how something so small can tilt your entire world. One night, one bed, one whisper, and suddenly, every ordinary moment feels laced with possibility. I found myself watching him more closely. The way his hair stuck up in the mornings. The way he bit his lip when he was focused on a video game. The way his eyes softened when he was tired, like the world was finally quiet enough for him to let down his guard. And sometimes, I'd catch him watching me too. His gaze lingering a beat too long. His mouth twitching like he was holding back words. But neither of us spoke. Until the second night. It wasn't raining this time. It was just late, the apartment quiet, the kind of stillness that makes you hyper-aware of every sound. I was in my room again, lying awake, when the door creaked open. "Hey," Evan said softly. "You up?" I didn't answer right away. My heart was already in my throat. He stepped inside, hesitated, then climbed into my bed again without asking. This time, he didn't keep his distance. His shoulder pressed against mine. His knee brushed my leg. He let out a long breath, like he'd been holding it all day. "Why do you do this?" I whispered, before I could stop myself. He was quiet for a moment. Then, "Because I feel safe here." Safe. The word lodged itself in my chest. Safe didn't explain the way his body angled toward mine, or the way his hand twitched like it wanted to reach for me. Safe didn't explain the silence that felt less like comfort and more like anticipation. I turned my head toward him. Safe doesn't usually feel this complicated. He let out a half laugh, half sigh. "Yeah, I know." We didn't say anything else. We just lay there, the air between us heavy with all the things we couldn't admit. I don't remember who moved first. Maybe it was him, maybe it was me. But suddenly our hands brushed, and then our fingers tangled, tentative, like testing the water. I thought he'd pull away. I thought he'd laugh it off. But he didn't. He held on. And in that fragile, breathless moment, it felt like the world had cracked open. We still didn't kiss. We didn't cross that line, not yet. But holding his hand in the dark felt more intimate than anything I'd ever experienced. When I woke the next morning, our hands were still linked. And this time, he didn't pretend it hadn't happened. He didn't rush out of the room. He just lay there, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Then he whispered, "I don't know what I'm doing." Neither did I, but I knew what I wanted. Over the next week, a quiet pattern began. He'd slip into my room at night, sometimes saying nothing, sometimes making some excuse about the rain, or the noise, or just not wanting to be alone. He'd climb into my bed, close enough that I could feel the warmth of him even if we didn't touch. And slowly, cautiously, we started allowing more. A hand on my arm, my head resting on his shoulder, his fingers tracing patterns against my palm. Small things, careful things, but each one was a step further into uncharted territory. During the day, we never talked about it. We played our roles, laughed at dumb TV shows, argued about dishes. But every night, when the lights were off and the world was quiet, we became something else. Something I couldn't name. And with each passing night, I felt myself falling deeper. But falling is dangerous when you don't know if someone's going to catch you. Because as much as Evan let me in during the dark, he never gave me certainty. He never said what he wanted, never admitted what this was. And the more it continued, the more that uncertainty started to gnaw at me. One night, after he slipped into bed beside me, I finally asked, "What are we doing?" He was silent for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, in a voice so low I almost didn't hear, "I don't know. I don't want it to stop." My heart twisted, because I didn't want it to stop either. But wanting and naming are two different things. "Evan," I whispered, "this feels like more than just comfort." He turned toward me, his face inches from mine in the dark. I could feel his breath against my skin. "Yeah," he said softly, "it does." We didn't say anything after that, but the truth was already out there, hanging between us, undeniable. And that was the night everything finally broke open, because for the first time he leaned in. His lips brushed mine, tentative like a question he was afraid to ask. And I answered. The kiss was soft, hesitant, almost clumsy, but it was real, and it was enough to unravel me completely. When we finally pulled back, neither of us spoke. We just looked at each other in the dim light, our breaths uneven, our hands still clasped tight. And in that silence, I knew. We had crossed a line we couldn't uncross. The mornings after became harder. It's easy to pretend nothing happened when all you did was share a bed. It's harder when you've kissed, when your lips still burn with the memory. Evan was quieter now, more careful. He'd avoid my eyes at breakfast, leave earlier for work, bury himself in his phone when we were on the couch. And yet, every night he still came back to my bed. The push and pull was maddening. I wanted to demand clarity, to ask him what he felt, what he wanted. But every time I opened my mouth, fear stopped me. Fear of breaking whatever fragile thing we'd built. So instead, I lived in the in-between. In the nights that felt like everything, and the days that felt like nothing. But the truth is, you can't live in the in-between forever. Eventually, something has to give. And for us, it happened on another rainy night, weeks after the first, when the storm outside matched the one I'd been carrying inside me all along. The rain was relentless that night, just like it had been the first time he'd climbed into my bed. Thunder rolled in the distance, the kind that makes windows rattle and sends a shiver through the walls. I was lying awake, staring at the ceiling, when the door opened. By now, I didn't even need to look. I knew it was him. He slid in beside me without a word. For a while, we just listened to the storm together, the rhythm of rain filling the silence. His arm brushed mine, and I could feel the question building inside me, pressing harder and harder against the back of my throat. Finally, I couldn't hold it anymore. "Evan," I whispered, "what are we?" He froze. I felt his breath catch, felt the stillness in his body. "I don't know," he said, the words sharp, almost defensive. "Don't you think we should figure it out?" My voice cracked despite my best efforts. His jaw tightened. I could see it in the faint glow from the streetlights outside. "Why do we have to put a label on everything? Can't we just be?" The words stung more than I wanted to admit, because for him, maybe it was just being. For me, it was so much more. "Do you even want this?" I asked. He turned then, eyes flashing. "Of course I want this." His voice was louder now, firm, like he was trying to convince himself as much as me. "I wouldn't be here if I didn't." "Then what are you so afraid of?" I whispered. He looked away, his throat working. The silence stretched. And then, so quietly I almost missed it, "I'm afraid of what it means, of what people will think, of losing myself in something I don't even understand yet." I felt my chest tighten, because I understood. I've been afraid too. But hearing him say it out loud, hearing the fear I'd sensed all along, made it real. "Evan," I said softly, "you don't have to have it all figured out. I just need to know I'm not the only one feeling this." His eyes finally met mine, raw and unguarded. "You're not." The storm outside cracked with thunder, shaking the glass, but all I heard was the weight of those two words. "You're not." And just like that, the space between us dissolved. He kissed me again, harder this time, less hesitant, like he was done pretending. His hand cupped my face, his fingers threading through my hair, pulling me closer. And I kissed him back, pouring every ounce of longing, of fear, of hope into it. It wasn't careful anymore. It wasn't safe. It was messy, urgent, desperate. Two people colliding after holding back for far too long. By the time we pulled apart, breathless, the storm had become background noise. The only storm that mattered was the one inside us. "I can't stop thinking about you," he admitted, his forehead pressed to mine. "Even when I try to, I can't." My chest ached with relief, with joy, with something dangerously close to love. "Then don't," I whispered. The days that followed were a blur of contradictions. At night, we were reckless. We kissed like we'd been starving. We touched like we were learning each other's language. We held on like letting go would mean losing everything. But in the daylight, he retreated. He became quiet, guarded, almost distant. We'd sit across from each other at breakfast, pretending nothing had happened hours earlier. And every time, the whiplash left me reeling. It was like living with two versions of him, the one who wanted me when the world was asleep, and the one who pretended not to when the sun came up. I told myself to be patient, that he needed time, that it was enough just to have those stolen nights. But patience can only stretch so far before it starts to tear. One morning, after another night tangled in sheets and silence, I finally cracked. "Evan," I said as we stood in the kitchen, him pouring coffee, me pretending to scroll on my phone. "We can't keep doing this." His hand froze on the handle of the mug. "Doing what?" I set my phone down. "Pretending. Being two different people depending on whether it's dark or light." He didn't look at me. He stirred sugar into his coffee like it was the most important task in the world. I need time," he muttered. "How much time?" My voice came out sharper than I meant. "Because I'm here. I'm all in. And it feels like you're half in, half out. Do you even want me, Evan? Or do you just want the comfort of knowing I'm here when it's convenient?" His jaw clenched. He set the mug down harder than necessary, coffee sloshing over the rim. "That's not fair," he snapped. "Neither is this," I shot back. "You can't keep pulling me close at night and pushing me away in the morning. You're breaking me in half." The words hung between us, heavy and raw. He finally looked at me then, and I saw it, the fear, the longing, the war inside him. "I do want you," he said, voice trembling. "I've never wanted anyone like this, and that terrifies me." I swallowed hard, my anger softening into something else, something that hurt even more. "Then let yourself want me," I whispered. But he just shook his head, eyes glistening like he couldn't quite let himself cross the last barrier. And in that moment, I realized something that broke me a little. Sometimes wanting isn't enough. That night, he didn't come into my room. For the first time in weeks, my bed was empty except for me. The storm outside had passed, but inside, I'd never felt so restless. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd pushed too hard, if I'd ruined everything. Because when love, or whatever fragile version of it we were building, meets fear, something has to give. And I wasn't sure which of us would break first. The silence between us lasted longer than I thought it would. One day turned into two. Two turned into three. Evan still moved around the apartment. He still made coffee in the mornings, still came home late from work, still laughed at the sitcoms we sometimes put on to fill the space. But he didn't come into my room anymore. And that absence felt louder than anything else. I missed the warmth of him, the quiet weight of his body beside me, the way he'd lace his fingers through mine in the dark like it was the only place in the world he could let himself be honest. Without it, my nights felt hollow, my bed too big. But I also knew I couldn't go back to living in that in-between. Not after everything we'd shared. By the fourth night, I almost gave in. I almost went to his room, almost knocked on his door, almost begged him to come back. But something stopped me. Pride, maybe. Or the fragile hope that if he wanted me badly enough, he'd be the one to come to me. And then, on the fifth night, he did. I was lying in bed, wide awake, when I heard it, the soft creak of my door opening. I turned, and there he was, standing in the doorway like a boy who'd done something wrong. "Hey," he said quietly. My heart lurched. "Hey." He hesitated, then stepped inside. But he didn't climb into bed right away. He just stood there, shifting his weight, hands stuffed into the pockets of his sweatpants. "I'm sorry," he said finally, "for disappearing, for being a coward." The words hit me harder than I expected. "Evan." "No, let me finish." His voice cracked, and he ran a hand through his hair. "I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I've never felt like this before, and it scares the shit out of me. I keep trying to push it down, to pretend it's not real, but every time I'm near you," he trailed off, shaking his head. "It's real. I can't deny it anymore." My throat tightened. "Then stop fighting it." He looked at me, eyes shining in the dim light. "I don't know how." I sat up, reaching out a hand. "Start by coming here." For a moment he didn't move. But then, slowly, like gravity itself was pulling him, he crossed the room and slid into bed beside me. And this time he didn't keep a careful distance. He pulled me against him, his arms wrapping around me, his face burying into my neck like he was afraid I'd disappear if he let go. We lay there for a long time, holding on to each other like the world outside didn't exist. And for the first time, I didn't feel like he was half in, half out. I felt him, all of him. When he finally spoke again, his voice was muffled against my skin. "I don't know what this means yet. I don't have the words. But I know I don't want to lose it. I don't want to lose you." And in that moment, it was enough. The weeks that followed were messy in the way first love often is. Some nights he was tender, pulling me close, whispering things he couldn't say in the daylight, kissing me like he was memorizing the shape of my mouth. Other nights he was restless, pacing the room, overthinking out loud, confessing fears about what people would think, what this meant for who he thought he was. But through it all, he kept choosing me. He kept showing up at my door, climbing into my bed, reaching for my hand in the dark. And slowly, that fear inside him began to loosen. One Saturday afternoon, weeks after that storm, we were sprawled on the couch watching some mindless movie when it happened. He reached over, absent-mindedly lacing his fingers with mine, in the middle of the day, with the sunlight streaming in, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I froze, staring at our joined hands, my chest aching. He noticed, followed my gaze, and for the first time he didn't pull away. He just gave my hand a squeeze, eyes steady on mine. That tiny gesture meant more than any kiss, because it wasn't just something he gave me in secret anymore. It was something he was willing to hold on to, even in the light. But love, real love, isn't a straight line. For every step forward, there was a step back. For every tender moment, there was a night where he'd retreat, where the fear would creep back in, where I'd lie awake wondering if this was all temporary. And then came the night that broke us. It wasn't dramatic, not at first. We were at a friend's party, one of those crowded apartment gatherings where music thumps and people spill drinks on the carpet. Evan was across the room, laughing with someone I didn't know, his arm slung casually over the back of the couch. And when I looked at him, I realized something that made my stomach sink. Out here, in the open, he was a stranger again. The Evan who kissed me in the dark didn't exist in this room. I spent the whole night trying not to let it show. But when we got home, it all came spilling out. "Do you even want this outside those four walls?" I demanded as soon as the door shut behind us. "Or am I just your secret?" He blinked, taken aback. "What are you talking about?" "You," I snapped, my voice shaking. "At that party, you wouldn't even look at me. God forbid anyone notice there's something between us. Do you know how that feels, Evan? To be wanted only in the dark." His face twisted, torn between anger and guilt. It's not that simple. It is to me. My voice cracked, because I'm here all in every part of me, and you're still hiding, still ashamed. I'm not ashamed of you, he said, almost shouting. I'm scared of losing everything I thought I was. The words hit me like a slap, and suddenly, I was too tired to fight. Maybe you already lost it, I whispered. Maybe that's the point. He stood there, breathing hard, his fists clenched at his sides. And for the first time, I didn't move to close the distance between us. That night, he didn't come to my room. And for the first time, I wondered if he ever would again. The days after that fight were some of the hardest I can remember. The apartment felt smaller, tighter, like the walls were pressing in on us. We moved around each other in silence, the air heavy with everything we'd left unsaid. When we did speak, it was clipped. Pass the salt. Rent's due Friday. You done with the laundry? It hurt in a way I hadn't expected. Not just because of him, but because of what we'd built together. This fragile, messy, beautiful thing that had bloomed between us. It was unraveling, and I didn't know how to stop it. At night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, waiting for the sound of his footsteps, waiting for the soft creak of the door, the dip of the mattress. But it never came. Night after night, my bed stayed empty. And the worst part was, I knew he was awake too. I could hear him pacing in his room sometimes, hear the restless thump of him tossing and turning. We were both awake, both hurting, both too stubborn or too scared to bridge the distance. It went on like that for a week. Then one evening, I came home to find him sitting on the couch, a beer in his hand, the TV flickering with some game he wasn't really watching. He looked up when I walked in, and for a second, it felt like everything could go back to normal. But then his eyes dropped, and the moment was gone. I sat down anyway, a few feet away, the silence stretching between us like a canyon. Finally, I said it. I can't do this anymore. His head snapped toward me. Do what? This? I said, gesturing between us. Whatever this is. The half versions. The hiding. The pretending. It's breaking me, Evan. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, his jaw tight. So what are you saying? I'm saying I can't keep being your secret, I whispered. I can't keep being the thing you only want when no one else is looking. I need more than that. I deserve more than that. The words hung heavy in the air. For a long time, he didn't answer. Then he set his beer down, leaning forward, his elbows on his knees. You don't get it, he said, his voice rough. I'm not like you. I can't just flip a switch and be okay with this. My whole life, I've been told what I'm supposed to be. And now, being with you, it feels right, it feels better than anything. But it also feels like I'm losing the person I thought I was. Do you understand what that's like? I swallowed hard. I do. More than you think. But maybe losing that person isn't the worst thing. Maybe it's the only way to find out who you really are. His eyes met mine then, raw and uncertain. And for a moment I thought he might say it, that he might finally admit what I'd been needing to hear. But instead he looked away. I don't know if I can. The words cut deeper than I wanted to admit. I stood up, my hands trembling. Then I don't know if I can stay. His head jerked up, panic flashing in his eyes. What do you mean? I mean, I said, my voice breaking, that if this is all we'll ever be, if I'm just your rainy night escape, your midnight secret, I can't keep doing it, because I'll end up hating you, and I'll end up hating myself for letting it happen. Silence. Just silence. So I walked into my room, closed the door, and for the first time since we'd become something more than roommates, I locked it. The next day, he didn't come home after work. I waited, half hoping, half dreading. Midnight came and went, the rain tapping against the windows, and still no sound of him at the door. By morning, his shoes were gone, and so was he. He didn't text, didn't call, didn't leave a note, just vanished. For a week, I lived in that emptiness. The apartment was too quiet, every corner haunted by him. The dent in the couch where he used to sit, the socks he'd always forget to pick up, the faint trace of his cologne in the hallway. I tried to tell myself it was better this way, that I'd wanted clarity and now I had it. But the truth was, it felt like I'd lost more than a lover. I'd lost my best friend. And the worst part was, I didn't even know if he was coming back. On the 9th day, I heard the sound of a key turning in the lock. I froze, my heart pounding, as the door opened. And there he was, hair messy, eyes tired, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. He looked at me like he didn't know if he was allowed. Like the threshold of the apartment was a line he wasn't sure he could cross. Finally, I found my voice. "You left." "I know," he said softly.
I'm sorry.
"Where did you go?" "Nowhere that mattered." He set the bag down, running a hand over his face. I needed space. I needed to think. And, my voice cracked, "Did you figure it out?" He stepped closer, hesitated, then said the words I'd been waiting to hear. "I figured out that I don't care what it means. I don't care what people think. The only thing that scares me more than being with you is the idea of not being with you at all." The air left my lungs in a rush. "Evan, I love you," he said, the words rushing out like he'd been holding them back for too long. "I don't know what it looks like yet. I don't know how to be good at it, but I love you. And I'd rather stumble through it with you than figure it out alone." For a long moment, I just stared at him, my chest aching with everything I'd carried, everything I'd been too afraid to hope for. Then I crossed the room, grabbed his face in my hands, and kissed him like it was the only thing keeping me alive. When we finally pulled apart, breathless, I whispered the words back. "I love you too." And for the first time, it didn't feel like a secret. Felt like the beginning of something real. Loving Evan out loud wasn't easy. Those first weeks after his return felt like walking a tightrope. On one hand, there was relief, finally having the words spoken aloud, finally knowing I wasn't carrying this weight alone. On the other, there was still hesitation, still the quiet pull of fear in him that I couldn't ignore. In the apartment, we were freer now. He kissed me in the kitchen once while I was cooking, the smell of garlic and onions still in the air. He rested his head in my lap during a movie, his hand loosely holding mine. These moments, soft and unguarded, filled me with a kind of joy I hadn't known before. But outside, that was different. We'd go out to the bar with friends, and suddenly the space between us was wider. He wouldn't brush against me, wouldn't look too long. He'd laugh, talk, drink, but he wouldn't reach for me. It was like watching him put on armor I'd thought he'd shed. And I told myself to be patient. Love, after all, is not just about what feels good. It's about wading through the storms, about giving someone the time they need to catch up to you. Still, there were nights I'd come home aching, wondering if I'd made a mistake. One night, lying in bed with him curled against me, I whispered, "Do you ever wish you could just not care about what people think?" His arm tightened around my waist. "Every day. Then why not let yourself?" He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Because I've spent my whole life being one person, and changing that, it feels like I'm setting fire to everything I know. And sometimes I wonder if you'll still be here when the flames die down." The words broke something in me. I rolled over to face him, cupping his cheek. "I'll still be here. I've been here the whole time. The only question is, will you let yourself stay with me?" He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw it, the war inside him, the push and pull of fear and desire, shame and love. "I'm trying," he whispered. "I swear I'm trying." And for a while, that had to be enough. The turning point came in the most unexpected way. It was a Sunday morning, gray and drizzly, the kind of day made for staying in. We were curled up on the couch, both in sweatpants, mugs of coffee in hand. I was scrolling through my phone when he suddenly spoke. "My mom called last night." I looked up. "Yeah." He stared into his coffee. "She asked if I was seeing anyone." My chest tightened. "What did you say?" He hesitated, then looked at me. "I told her yes." My breath caught. "You did." He nodded slowly. "She asked who, and I said your name." I set my mug down before I dropped it. "Evan." "I don't know what came over me," he went on, his voice trembling. "I just couldn't lie anymore. Not about you." Not when you mean this much. Tears stung my eyes. What did she say? He gave a shaky laugh. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, well, if he makes you happy, that's what matters. I covered my mouth, trying to process the weight of it. Because for him, saying my name out loud, claiming me even in that small, private way, that was huge. That was fire meeting air, fear meeting truth. I reached for his hand, squeezing it tight. You have no idea what that means to me. He looked at me with something unguarded, something I hadn't seen so openly before. I think I do, because it means just as much to me. After that, things began to shift. He didn't transform overnight. Fear doesn't evaporate just because you've named it. But little by little, he let more light in. He kissed me on the cheek once as we walked back from the grocery store. The bags digging into our hands, rain misting around us. A small kiss, quick and almost shy, but it was outside, in public, and no one's stare could take it away. He started introducing me differently too. No longer just my roommate, sometimes my friend, and eventually, hesitantly, but proudly, my boyfriend. The first time he said it, my chest ached so deeply I thought I might break. And somewhere in those months, I realized we'd stopped living in the in-between. We were real. Messy, complicated, imperfect, but real. Looking back, I think about that first night. The rain hammering the windows, the tentative way he slipped into my bed, the whisper that changed everything. Do you ever think about it? About us? At the time, I didn't know the answer. I didn't know if we'd survive the storms, the fights, the fear. I didn't know if he'd ever be able to love me in the light. But now, years later, I do. Because the truth is, that night wasn't just the beginning of us. It was the beginning of him becoming himself. And maybe that's what love really is. Not just finding someone to climb into bed with on a rainy night, but finding someone worth stepping into the daylight for. Someone who makes you want to stay.